Miss Melissa Egbert. Before we get started, one thing was left on the agenda, and that would be the approval of the minutes from last meeting. I would ask that the board do that before we get into anything else. So I will turn it over to the Vice President.
Motion to approve the minutes is read.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Minutes are approved. All right. So on the agenda, we have some new business that we wanted to discuss. First, we get the discussion of a letter to the editor of March 23rd, 2022, in the additional Governmental News from Mr. Michael Sims.
You have to speak up.
Can you speak up?
I'm sorry.
Well, I have kids, but they get mad when I talk that loud.
No, that's okay with us.
Okay, so we're gonna be looking at the agenda. Item number 1, discussion related to the letter of the editor. We want to have some discussion on that. I talked with our board members and we wanted to discuss that. So we're gonna open that up for discussion. Melissa, do you have anything you want to address on that?
I did. So the primary purpose for my suggesting that we discuss it in here was the question, why have a referendum when we can go in debt without a referendum? So I asked Bo to look into it, and Bo actually pulled up some documentation, and if you'll go ahead and
Yeah.
explain what that was.
So, under the state constitution, or Georgia Constitution, 1983, Article 9, Section 5, Paragraph 1A, provides in part, no county shall incur debt, new debt, without the assentment of a majority of the qualified voters in such a county, voting in an election held for that purpose as provided by law. Now, while a referendum is required for ordinary debt, there are limited exceptions to the referendum requirement for revenue bonds, tax anticipation notes, lease purchase agreement obligations, and certain certificates of participation, authority borrowings, and certain specialized types of borrowings. Any county borrowing must meet the requirements applicable into one of these categories. So, regular, ordinary debt, correct. There needs to be a referendum, but there are numerous exceptions within that that allows a county to borrow money when it needs to, in different ways. That said, the article, and if I'm misspeaking or if I'm out of line or miss the gist of what was written in the article, let me just pull them here so I can make sure. To keep this corporation open would be a disaster. I'm quoting this, I'm not saying this. Disaster for the citizens and voters of Union County for the following reason. It takes away the right of citizens to vote in a referendum on the county, going into debt, and skirts around the state laws on referendums, which would lead all counties in the state doing the same thing. Why have a referendum when we can go into debt without a referendum? This corporation has no power over the law that is already there. So this corporation doesn't change that. If this corporation is dissolved, Union County government can still do the exact same thing and enter into a lease purchase agreement without the corporation. What you do have is that this corporation will not be here as another layer of approval for that. That is what, did I read that correctly?
In my opinion, yes.
That's the way that I understand that.
So the corporation's initial intention, according to what we have read and discovered, was in order to provide better financing options to the county and its taxpayers when it comes to borrowing for land. So if you're a county and you need to obtain money for land purchase, you traditionally would have to issue some kind of bond, and those can sometimes be expensive.
They're always expensive.
Well, you can then create a corporation that's a subsidiary of the Union County government to be able to help you go out and obtain better financing so that it costs the taxpayers less to buy and borrow, buy land and borrow funds.
That's right.
Can we ask questions?
I don't see one.
Yes.
All right. First of all, why do we need the money to purchase the land?
Well, we don't need any money to purchase any land
Well,
at this
why
point.
do we need the land? Let me rephrase that. Why do we need the
We're
land?
not purchasing any land though. This was created, what, 11 years ago? In order to purchase.
It was created
2001.
21 years ago.
21 years ago.
And how much money are we talking about?
Well, we're not, this is only here.
There's nothing on the table for a purchase.
We're not
right now.
purchasing
There's
anything.
no land to be purchased. There's no plan.
Maybe this will help. I don't know if it will or not.
Thank you.
This corporation was created in 2001 to have a lease purchase agreement of the land that now has the DMV, double gym, all that stuff. It was financed over 10 years. The payments were paid then. There's been no money in and out for financing anything except that one property that was paid off, I believe, in 2011.
That's why.
There's no new property that the county's wanting to finance. There's no new property they're looking to buy with the corporation.
And I think a lot of people are misunderstanding why we're here today.
Okay.
Because I think a lot of people think that we're here to hear what you have to say as far as purchasing and financing the property, which is the Hill property.
What? Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, that's why I want to make that clear.
Yeah, no. So I think the main goal, to be quite honest, for us here is to decide today whether we're gonna keep this finance corporation open. And we talked, and I'm not speaking out of turn, I hope, but if I am, stop me. Our goal was to determine whether it does need to stay open or not. So we asked a lot of questions and do a lot of digging. Right now, there is no property to purchase, there's no real reason to have us.
I just wanted to make sure
Yes.
that wasn't on the table.
No.
Because that's the reason a lot of people are here.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, thank you. I think sometimes we assume things,
Right,
and you know that old story about what assuming does.
right.
And that really is very true. And, I think that would you like to say something?
I would like to say something. We've asked for several weeks for an agenda, trying to find out what this meeting is about, and nobody would give us one. We even went to the Attorney General trying to get an agenda, and because of the kind of like hidden, factor of this, we had no clue what was gonna happen here. And we didn't want another thing to happen like, because we know the hospital property's up for sale, and we didn't want another one of those to happen without us knowing. Just like the Gouder property and then the shoe factory. The Gouder house and the shoe factory, we didn't want that to happen again. And that's what we were afraid of, because there was no transparency as usual in this county.
Okay.
And Mercer, you knew we kept asking for agenda. We kept sending them to the county, to the Attorney General, and to you,
Yes.
asking for an agenda.
The agenda, from my understanding, was posted in the courthouse on Thursday. Attempted to be posted online on Thursday, but something was wrong with the servers. It was posted online on Friday.
Why didn't they answer that then when the calls kept being made to ask about the agenda?
I got an email this morning that I replied to. I can only speak for myself, ma'am, but I got an email this morning that I replied to. I didn't even have a copy of the agenda. I was just kind of told of what was on it, but I forgot the first part.
But wouldn't it have been nice to contact Mike Sims so he could have been here to maybe have his questions? Is he, okay.
Mr. Sims, you're Mr. Sims, correct?
Yeah, you're Mr. Mercer.
Great to meet you, Mr. Sims. Mr. Sims is here.
Okay.
There's a lot everybody needs to know about this, it's in litigation in the courts, okay? The finance corporation is basically a privately owned business. Mr. Parrish created it in 2001. And he did it so you didn't have to have a referendum. By Georgia law, any money borrowed, if the county has to go in debt, Georgia law states you gotta have a referendum. This corporation, by creating it, he bypassed that law. And that's the litigation I have just in the court now with Mr. Mercer. we don't know how the court's gonna rule. There's no way you can find out. And it may take months for it to rule. I did Mr. Mercer, I gave a handout, and I got one for you also, that I gave them. You may have saw it, you may have read it. And so, that doesn't explain everything about the litigation. But basically, it's a leasing corporation. Corporation is the lessor, county is the lessee. The corporation borrows money, as one of the board members mentioned. They maybe can get some good deals on borrowed money, but when they do, you've lost your right for a referendum to vote whether or not you want the county to go in debt. Spending money is not against the law. All governments spend money, county, state, federal, they always spending money. But by spending money, that's money within the budget. And everybody knows that government's real good at spending dollars and increasing our taxes. But when you're doing leasing or you're doing borrow of money, the special rules you have to go by. That's all I have to say. Mr. Burson and I will be talking later, I hope.
Yes, sir.
Did the county violate any laws by doing this?
If they violated your referendum law, by allowing them not to vote, you have a right to vote.
But the law says, if I understand it correctly, that you don't have to have a referendum if you do it through a corporation.
That is, well, and even, not even through a corporation, there's an exception within the referendum law that allows, and I stated that early on at the beginning, referendum is required for ordinary debt. There are limited exceptions to the referendum requirement for revenue bonds, tax anticipation notes, lease purchase obligations, authorized, authority borrowing, and certain specialized types of borrowing. And I can, I've got information further in detail about lease purchase financing. So whether the corporation does it as a subsidiary of the county, or whether the county does it on their own, they're within their right in the law
So
to do a
there
lease
is,
purchase agreement.
basically what you're saying is that what would happen when this corporation was set up, there was no violation of the law. So your lawsuit is frivolous.
Not really?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Okay, well, that's,
I have a right to.
Okay.
All right.
Gentlemen,
Everyone has a
gentlemen,
right.
if we could direct, questions, comments
And of course,
towards the
that's gonna be
board.
in court.
We're here, this is the board meeting, encouraged to hear what everyone has to say, but let's keep the comments and the questions directed at the board. Thank you, sir. Gentlemen, thank you.
My question here is, this corporation has been in effect for 21 years. It was used for 10 years for the Bill Elliott property, and then all of a sudden, it would zip your lip on it for the next 11 years, and that is the only property you have even had anything to do with. I say, dissolve your corporation. It's for one item, no thanks.
And I understand where you're coming from, and I thought about that a lot. I really did. And I look back as a former, well, still in finance, but as a former banker. Looking back, I don't know if any of you remember what financing and what borrowing was like in 2001, or in 2002, or in 2004, or 2008. It used to be really expensive right before everything exploded. It was very expensive. Bond debt was very expensive. Every type of financing was expensive. But we were able, I assume, reading from what I read, the corporation was able to find very competitive financing to do this in a way that a bond issuance would not have been available. It's just the way that I understood the reasoning behind that. Looking at where we are now, and we're watching the economy, we're watching inflation, we're seeing where interest rates have gone up 50 basis points in the last month, and they're expecting at least another 75, maybe 100 basis points to the end of the year. Our rates are headed back up again, and I like the idea of being able to have flexibility and options when it comes to if something were to come up and it were to be needed. Again, this is an if and only if. I mean, it's not, there's no plan in place, but I like having options.
And we discussed the cost of keeping.
We have no choice. When you have a Soap County Commissioner, we have no choice in the matter.
That's why we're here.
Well, that's why we're here.
Well, I know,
Before
but
we
you-
get on to any more statements and questions, just for the record, I want to clarify that we've started getting into the number 2 discussion,
Yes.
related to the
Yes.
Union County Governmental Finance Corporation remaining active or being dissolved.
Yes,
Are we done with agenda item 1?
we are. It was just to establish that, I think, are you?
I'm done.
Yes, it was to,
So if we could continue with item number 2, discussion related to the Union County Governmental Finance Corporation remaining active or being dissolved.
so.
Let's put my question back on discussion number 2.
Okay.
Okay, so what I was saying is we also discussed if this corporation were to remain open, how much it would cost the county, every year. And I believe we spoke it was under $100 a year for the annual renewal fees. Whereas if the county were to ever need to create an organization like this again to obtain better financing options, it would probably cost at least $1,500, if not more, to reestablish a corporation to do the exact same thing this one's doing.
Ms. Egbert, in my legal opinion, if someone came to me to create this type of corporation, it would be way more
Yeah, way more.
than what you quoted. And I believe Ms. Caldwell Weaver, who is also an attorney, practiced many, many more years than I have. She would probably back me
Yeah.
up on that.
So the cost to reestablish an organization to help the county obtain better financing options would be much more costly than just annually keeping this open at under $100 a year.
So as long as you have the corporation, nobody's ever allowed to vote on anything you're gonna do,
Right,
ever?
they will.
No, the corporation doesn't have any rights or abilities.
No, I mean, we.
Us.
We have no right to
As
vote
long as
on
it's a
that.
corporation, then the voters don't have any say.
No, ma'am, that's not correct. If there's a lease purchase agreement, then the county can go into that, and that's an exception to any referendum. Or they can have the subsidiary corporation go through that, which is still an exception to the referendum. If your question is, if everything is purchased with lease purchase agreements, if that's how it was done, then you'd probably be correct. If that's the only way that debt was incurred from the county, but it's not. And on this particular corporation, it was used almost 22 years ago for one thing. It's never been used again. Quite frankly, it got forgotten about for a decade until Mr. Sims started looking into it.
Yeah, they don't pay a fee every year. It's not a true statement. I mean, if you had to pay a fee every year to get the corporation going, to keep it going, it had to come up, so it wasn't an oversight.
Yeah.
So you got
Yeah.
one.
And from my understanding, ma'am, that was done by Boyd Pettit's office. They were the one through his office that kept it going.
No.
And he,
I beg.
from my understanding, I think that's what happened. And, you know, he would just bill the county each month with his normal bill. If someone caught it, they caught it, but I don't think it was the clerks going online and doing that for the.
Well, their names were all on the papers.
Yes, ma'am, there's ex officio appointments on this corporation, so if there was another county commissioner or a board of commissioners, those people would automatically be put in place. Whenever there's a new clerk or finance director, those names automatically get put in that place.
Now,
Ms. Barton has been waiting for.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
Sorry, I had to see.
One of the issues I have, and if you look at the June 21st, 2001 special meeting that the board had, they voted on, and I'm gonna read this, it's a little extensive, that the president of the corporation, including without limitation Lamar Parish, be and hereby is authorized and empowered to exercise all powers and authority on behalf of the corporation. So it makes, and then when you read down further, it tells you all the transactions can be done by just the commissioner. So that concerns me that it wouldn't go through the board. If we had a board, then if you wanted to buy property, then the board would vote on it. But the way this vote is on June 21st, 2001, it makes the commissioner solely able to do whatever he wants to do within this commission. So that's a concern of mine, and that was voted on and approved by the commission. And I have that if you'd like to take a look at that.
That's not right.
Well, Ms. Barton, I can tell you, why I haven't seen what you're talking about. We have a board right here that is gonna meet twice a year. Unless there's something that comes up where they wanna do a special called meeting, still have notice ran in the paper for this meeting. Everyone who came to the last meeting, we set the meeting then. So everyone that was present got a verbal notice for this. Mr. Parris is not even taking the commissioner's not even taking a voting role in this. That is why the appointments went in, and that's why we're here.
And that would be something that you need to look at to renege on this voted item. And like I say, it is minutes of a special meeting of the Board of Directors, Union County Governmental Financial Corporation, June 21st, 2001. So that was a very big concern for me, that it takes the power away from a board and puts it onto one person to make all the decisions.
And Ms. Barton, I'll be happy to pull that, look at that, and give you my full opinion on that. Because if that was an initial meeting before board members were approved, that could be it. I can tell you it's never changed the bylaws, and it's never changed the articles of incorporation. But I will be happy to look into it and 100% give you my opinion.
Yes,
If I understand what you're telling us, the corporation is basically set up to look for special financing. If the county commissioner comes to you guys and says, okay, we have a piece of property here, you know, inflation's high, interest rates are high, can you find better, rates on money to borrow? But it's only that case, if the interest rates are low, the county has the money, then the commissioner himself can go ahead and buy without ever going through you guys. So you guys are there for the convenience, or not convenience, not a good word, for the use by the commissioner in the county to find better, pricing.
And just so everyone understands what you're saying, is what you're saying is correct. A commissioner or a board of commissioners in Georgia can enter into a lease purchase agreement in one of the 158 counties in this state without holding a referendum.
This actually provides a little bit more of a layer, because if we're considering helping with the financing, we have to vote on it in front of everyone here. Wesley?
I've got to ask, I want to carry you guys back in time to about 1974, maybe 75. Union General Hospital Incorporated was created, and right now we have a 40-year lease on Union General Hospital Incorporated, which they actually own all the assets. There is an active corporation right now in the state of Georgia that owns those properties. At the end of that 40-year lease, I am very concerned that we're going to end up in a legal battle on who owns the hospital and the healthcare systems here. That was done by the same token that you guys are proposing to do. You can actually establish a corporation. You do whatever you want to do, and I know you have to do it in front of us, but by the same token, you can do that and enter into that agreement. Now, I trust you guys. Some of you I don't know, but by the same token, I think that's a valid question. What controls or interest does the residents have or influence on what you guys do?
I have a question for the chairman.
They didn't ask it.
Did I misunderstand you, or did you say that you have no power to either vote this organization be certified not to have it? Did I understand that?
I didn't understand your question, I'm
Okay.
sorry.
I thought I understood that you said that your board has no authority to close the finance corporation down. Is that correct?
No, we
No,
have the
we-
authority
that's
to
what
do
we're
that.
voting on.
Yeah.
So,
Yes,
We have the authority to do that. That's, was the
my
purpose of
apologies, I
it.
misunderstood.
But if the people don't want it.
Is
I missed the first meeting, so you may have covered this. And so everybody, excuse me, but you're new to the board, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Who was on the board from 2001 till a month ago? Do we have a list of the people that were on the board?
There were original members in 2001, members of the board. I don't know their names offhand,
Okay.
but they were listed in some of the, I don't want to say offhand, but they were listed in some
This
legal
is-
documents. I can't remember their names offhand. One
So
of them is-
essentially, all that was done was every year, you filed the, registration fee with the Secretary of State to keep the corporation live.
I'll get to that. The original 4-member, or the original 3-member board, they only have a 4-year term. Technically, they were never reappointed. I don't think I don't think they even kept up with having the 2 meetings they're supposed to have as per the articles after the property was paid off. I don't think there were any meetings.
Do you think?
One of the members is deceased now. One was very ill, one's very elderly. We did have to go through a process late last year, early this year, to reappoint new members. But yes, since the property was paid off in, I believe, 2011, the only sort of transaction, if you could call it that, is reinstating the corporation each year. Is that what you're saying?
In 2001, the original board was appointed for 4 years.
All
So
4 members have 4-year appointments.
So in 2005, if they weren't reappointed, then the corporation sat there without anybody being responsible for the corporation from 2005 until a month ago.
Correct.
Essentially, yes, but there was no new business.
Well, you gotta pay off the property.
It was just an oversight.
But I think that people might get a gist of what I'm trying to say is, the corporation was created, and this is not the best way to term it, but it was created as a trick. And once the trick was pushed, then they didn't need it. They didn't need it anymore, so they just pushed it to the side and said, we're gonna go on.
What's the necessity to have it now? I mean, if you didn't use it.
I mean, you stated earlier, the years that we've gone through, that we've had trouble with finances. But yet, as you sit there, the people that were before you were never enlisted to help the county during those hard times. So, and I really respect anybody that wants to serve, public, but I'm at a total loss when we have one commissioner, how we have 3 people that can influence borrowing, when some of the hardest times that I've been through in my lifetime have happened since 2001, and this corporation did nothing. I'm finished.
I would like to bring up something too, and I brought it up at the last meeting, in Splosh, and this is in Splosh. All right, we're gonna go back to the Splosh referendum, and it's a little bit different, but it's the same kind of situation. All right, in the Splosh referendum, we were supposed to, pay for the multi-purpose, building for $3,500,000. After the referendum, he went out and got another corporation and got a revenue bond without our permission, and borrowed another $5 million for that. And right now, we're into over $9 million on this building. But the thing of it is, that building was supposed to be turned over to us too, and it's still sitting in their name.
Yeah.
And are you claiming it's sitting in this corporation's name?
Urban redevelopment.
In the urban redevelopment, it was supposed to be turned over to us at the same time when it was paid off, and it's not, just like what happened in this corporation.
And you brought that up at the last meeting.
Yes,
And
I
I
did.
told you we would look into it and work on it. But let's get this done first, and then, cause that's a whole separate entity, a whole separate everything.
I know, but it's kind of the same
Young,
situation.
young lady in
under
the back,
oversight.
please.
Yeah, I have a question about the corporation that goes off of the gentleman in the blue striped shirt. If you were renewing the articles of incorporation every 4 years and filing it with the state, did you not have to have a board members named? I thought that if you're incorporated, you had to have members named. Does that make it invalid since you were filing it without board members?
You don't renew articles of incorporation. Those are just created when the corporation's created, and bylaws are created when the corporation's created.
But when you
Now,
file with the state?
I'll get to that, ma'am. You create those documents, you can amend those documents. If amended, you need to file them with the states. But the Secretary of State's office won't have the board members on there. They'll have like the president, which is automatically appointed depending on who's voted in, the clerk of the county, the secretary is the clerk. You also would have like the CFO that's listed there. It's just some commonly listed names in corporations. Board members aren't put on there. Does that answer your question?
Kind of, but are they appointed, elected, how do they get assigned to the corporation? I used to work a nonprofit, I was the bookkeeper finance, so we were nonprofit incorporated, and we always had the name in the minutes, and it, go through all the meetings, and if you're not having meetings, how are you appointing people to those positions to renew the incorporation?
Because those positions in the articles of incorporation and the bylaws were set to be not people, but
Okay.
specific positions
Understood.
in the county government.
Okay.
And so there doesn't have to be a vote or an approval to have a new CEO or a new secretary. It automatically goes to that position from the county.
Sitting on that seat.
The board members are the only ones that have to be voted in, basically, or sworn in through a county meeting.
So those names are not actually on the incorporation either, it's just the position. So there are no names on the articles of incorporation.
I want to say the initial ones were listed as here are the initial people that will be there. But that wouldn't that wouldn't make you have to amend that. That is just at the initial point, this is what it is, these are 4-year terms, then, they'll have to go through with that. Mr. Hopgood?
Let me make sure I understand what you guys are saying.
Ma'am,
You have,
I want to add one thing to the question. That is, corporation only has one member, or parish. Board without members, they're own board, but they're not a member. He's listed as the only member of that corporation.
I would have to disagree with you, Mr. Sims.
It's in the bylaws, you can read them.
I have, sir. There is a 4-member board.
What corporation also is in there.
I have, sir. There's a 4-member board. Mr. Parrish, or not even Mr. Parrish's name is listed. It is the Commissioner of Union County, Georgia, is listed as one of the members, and is also listed as the President and CEO. The Commissioner of Union County, Georgia. That's who, it's an ex officio appointment, meaning if it was Mr. Sims that was the commissioner, your name would automatically be in there. But that's why it says the Commissioner of Union County, Georgia, that you don't have to keep changing it when the commissioner changes or the clerk changes or anything like that.
And I also understand why there probably hadn't been many board members, because basically it's mostly a volunteer thing. And you've got to have citizens willing to volunteer to help. And my understanding is it's not a paid position. If you have to spend money out of your pocket, you can get reimbursed for that. But those type of corporations have a member or members. Okay? You have a board, they not necessarily may not be members. So you need to read it thoroughly.
Mr. Sims, I think where you're getting confused, and if I'm wrong, I apologize. When you think of an LLC, the people who own the LLC are called members, okay? Those are called members in an LLC. Those are the owners of an LLC. This is a domestic nonprofit corporation. So the members are the board members, which the commissioner is also appointed as a board member, okay? And from my understanding, he's not gonna take part in voting on anything. That's why we have these lovely people from our community to do so.
Maybe the rest of us need to go back and read.
Maybe so. Mr. Hopkins.
Thank you. I want to make sure I understand what we're talking about here. In the beginning, there was a corporation form, and it had officers of the incorporation and board of directors. You established this committee, what you have here, back in time. You actually used that to create a loan with repayments for a period of time. Once that was established, there was no other loan activity. So the problem here is y'all failed to file the corporate restoration at the end of the first 4 years to continue it. Is that what we're talking about?
I don't understand what you're talking about, a failed to file a corporate
So,
restoration.
People's talking about, you know, you guys have done something shady or what have you, because something happened after the first initial establishment with a loan, to create a loan for the county to purchase property. After that point in time, that loan was established for a certain period of time. Since it was established, there was no other activities, and you guys did not reappoint every 4 years new board members. The only things that you failed to do is file every 4 years, or whatever time frame you had to, the application for the continuation of that corporation. Is that what we're talking about?
No, sir. To renew a corporation, okay? A corporate
It's
entity.
just a filing fee. Maybe I mislabeled that.
You file your corporation with the Secretary of State.
Right.
Thank goodness, everything's online now. And it wasn't like it was even 8 years ago, where everything had to be done by mail. You can file it online. If they accept it, then it's official corporation of Georgia, okay? To renew that corporation, you just have to pay a simple renewal fee every year.
That's right.
And you don't have to file new paperwork.
And I understand it, and I wasn't alluding to that. The only thing that I was saying was somewhere, at some point in time, y'all didn't file the necessary papers or the restoration paper to continue the corporation.
Mr. Hopgood, I don't believe there's such a thing, because if there was a termination period when the corporation was created, and that can happen sometimes. You can create a corporation or an LLC or a partnership or whatever business entity you run.
Yeah, we
You
have
can-
those, we do that every year.
You can have a set termination for that,
Right.
built into the articles that you file. If you're gonna continue that, you'll have to file some paperwork to say, you know, whoever voted or decided, or the stockholders, members, whoever,
Yeah.
to continue. There's no termination for this corporation unless the board decides they vote to terminate the corporation. Every 4 years, there doesn't have to be a refiling just for new board members.
The reason that I asked that question, it seems like to me that's what I hear everybody saying. And I'm just trying to clarify this.
Yes, sir.
And another point that I'm trying to make too is the major concern of this board doing anything is people want to have some kind of influence into it, whether it be by referendum or what have you. And there's got to be an easy solution for that. And I hush, I'm going home.
Have we finished number 2 with discussion?
Yeah, I think we should move on to number 3.
So, let me understand this real quick. If this board is dissolved today, if y'all vote to dissolve this board today, it would put the county in a position to where they would have a harder time looking for finance unless you go through a government sort of issuing a bond or whatever. Is that correct?
It would limit the options that they have.
Right, so
Counties
if-
can only borrow in a certain capacity, a certain way.
So if this board remains, that would give the county more options to look for financing beyond those measures that a normal county would do.
Yeah, we haven't.
Okay, that's clear.
One more question.
To answer that, this corporation can get into a lease purchase agreement, which is a legal exception to a referendum. If this corporation did not exist, the county could still enter into a lease purchase agreement. I understand some people think there's no transparency. If you don't get an answer quick enough or anything like that. But with this board, if the county is going to do a lease purchase agreement, okay, it is going to have to go through this corporation, unless it's shut down. Every member here is a member of the public that I see out here, and everyone's welcome. And if there are more people that show up, we'll have to get a bigger room next time. Everyone's welcome. You're welcome to be heard. You're welcome to have your statements heard and your questions answered. At least if it stays open, if there's ever some sort of lease purchase agreement they want to do for property down the line, at least it gives the public an opportunity to come in and say their piece to the board. But right now, the county's not looking to buy any property that I'm aware of this type of deal.
I don't think anybody is opposed to you guys working in a manner that's gonna save the taxpayers' money. That's not a question. And it goes back to what I was saying. And there needs to be some vehicle that you guys can come up with to make the citizens feel comfortable in what you're doing. Because I don't think the board needs to be shut down. And I step way out when I make that comment.
Yes, ma'am.
I have one more question. We're talking about this lease land agreement stuff. That's the only thing you're here for? You don't correct our budget? You don't place loan for our shortfall?
Literally, the only thing we would do is if the county ever
I'm sorry.
needed. Literally, the only thing we would be involved in is if the county needed to go to a financial institution or something outside of issuing bonds for financing and helping the county obtain better financing. We don't
So then
decide.
you could do that for the budget too, right?
No,
No.
it would only be
You
on,
didn't-
it would
you
only
didn't
be
say
on
just
lease
finance.
purchase
You didn't
agreements.
say anything about land lease.
So they just started you up, I'm new, just started you up. So are you planning on buying some more property?
I don't have the authority to buy property.
All we do is help with financing.
Okay, is that in the plan?
No.
So there's no reason?
The only reason we're here today, honestly, is to discuss whether we keep the corporation open. So we wanted to hear what everybody had to say. And then we also wanted to make it clear about what due diligence we've done behind the scenes about why we would decide to or not to keep it open.
We had no ability to do anything back when this corporation was set up. You know, I was here, I started looking at documents way back then. We had no input, no nothing. So we bought 9 acres for over $900,000 and we had no say-so. And so that's what's gonna happen again. I mean, if y'all have the authority to keep this open, again, like everything else, we have no say-so.
What was done with the 9 acres?
That's what was bought with this.
What was done with it?
So to answer your question, we're just another layer. The county could do that anyway.
Right.
So.
But we're just saying what
And
happened.
I understand too. I do.
I mean, we were very upset, you know, you go out and buy 9 acres for $900,000 for Bill Elliott, and we had no say-so.
Well, as a Union Countyan, born and raised right here, I was born right up here in this building where the 911 center's at. The elementary school that I went to school with, right down there at the Board of Education, the old building was tore down. Does anybody in here know what A, B, and C building is?
I do.
You know what I'm saying? So, have you got your driver's license renewed up here at the building? I love this place. I love this place. Why are we arguing about it? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
For the board, and if you've got a statement, I'd please like to hear it, but please direct statements and comments towards the board.
My apologies to everybody. I'm just proud to be in Union County.
And ma'am, if I could add something to your point. If the county doesn't take on debt of a certain kind, the county can buy all the property that it wants to. The county, and there doesn't have to be a referendum, there doesn't have to be a special bond, there doesn't have to be a lease purchase. The county can buy, sell, and dispose of property in many different ways without having a vote or anything like that. I understand that's
our concern.
That's your concern.
It's our concern.
But again, everybody gets to vote in the county. You vote for your representatives, and we entrust them to make decisions. And if you don't feel they don't make a good decision, you've always got a way to come have your voice heard. And there's all kinds of things you can do, ma'am. I'm sure you're aware of.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, most people know me, well, these guys know me, so I'm just gonna put it out there, cause I'm hearing a whole lot of all going around. Maybe a little bit of comfort factor. Miss Robbie, could you please explain how this board came to be? Like, was there a vote, like, or were names thrown in a hat? Was it Harry Potter? How did this board?
Meaning us
I'm
three?
sorry, I'm trying to, like, you know, give realistic things, and everybody knows I don't have a filter, but who chose the board, all of that. Miss Robbie, I know you to be a good person, so that's why I'm looking right at you, so.
Okay, I'll be happy to answer any question I can.
Thank
Are you talking about initially?
No, this
or
board here,
us?
like, yes, who decided, like, was it put out there for Union County citizens? I mean, wherever you go at Young Harris College, not sure, you're a little bit younger than me, but, how did this board come to be? I'm trying to like appease both sides so that it's not so, I see the logistics of having the board, but then again, I don't blame being a Union County girl. I can see where there's a lot of questions. Usually I don't pop in very often, but being here, this one interests me because I tried to find something, Mr. Mercer, about how this board came to be, and I could not find that. So I wanted to just try to ease some questions that I think people are trying to get across is how was this board chosen? When was it talked about? Was there a meeting? I've been in and out of the hospital, so I wouldn't have known. So.
I can't speak to how everybody else was contacted, but I was asked by the Commissioner's office if I would be willing to serve on a county board. I think maybe that's part of the confusion here. This is not a private corporation. It's not a corporation that's owned by an individual. It's a county corporation. It's actually designed in order to save the county. And most of y'all were here when I told you I was born in 1956, and you could figure out how long I've been here. I did leave to go to school, but I came back as soon as I could get back. This is my home. And when I was asked to do something, I said I will be happy to serve on that board. I was then given all of the documents to go back and read to see how, why, when the board was formed. And it seemed to me that this was a very legitimate business that needed to be taken care of on behalf of the citizens of Union County. I see the smiles. You know, I get that. I'm not here to support any one person because the commissioner asked, or the commissioner's office asked me to serve. That does not mean that either I or any of the other members of the board are going to be, I guess the terminology you would understand would be a yes man. I looked at this, I made an independent decision as to what I think is best for the county, and that in turn is best for everyone. So I agreed to serve on the board. I have to admit, I really didn't expect the negativism and the fear that I see from people. That's very alarming to me. You know, when I grew, I'll be happy to get to it in just a minute. When I grew up, I grew up in a town where people got along. It didn't make much difference if you were a Democrat or Republican. You probably ate lunch at the same table. Sadly, I don't see that anymore. And I think that we talk about wanting to have Union County be a good place. Union County can be a good place, but we have to be a little more trusting of our neighbors. And it's not just Union County. I mean, look at the news. You turn on the news, Channel 5, how many kids are shot in their own neighborhood? We've become such an angry, angry country. And sadly, I think COVID made it worse. We became more isolated, and we became more angry. My purpose here is simply to try to make a difference, maybe. And I'm not here to try to frustrate or pull the wool over anybody's eyes. This board is here for one reason, and that's to assist the county, should it be necessary in the future, in order to effectuate the purchase of property. Nothing has been discussed. To my knowledge, there is absolutely nothing that is going to be purchased.
And before we get to other questions, to kind of further answer that question, how this particular board came about, when it got brought to the Commissioner's office attention that we had no active board members, the clerk, the finance director, and the accounts payable director went searching for qualified people in this field that would be willing to serve for
I'm
free.
qualified, I didn't get a phone call.
I'm sorry, ma'am, I don't know you, I don't know your qualifications. I wasn't part of the selection. I believe you are qualified if you tell me. But we have an esteemed attorney that's been in this community.
You don't need to speak on me about Miss Robbie.
We have, and two other esteemed Union
I'm
County.
aware of both.
Union County residents that are both in finance, which is, and have been in finance for decades. And they agreed, the commissioner had to approve, he did, They were actually voted in to be board members or read into the minutes of the January 2022 meeting.
I saw that.
And they gave their introduction last time. We didn't give another introduction this time, but that's kind of how this board came about.
To speak to the negativity and that you're feeling, there is a reason for the distrust, and it's not the distrust of you all. I mean, the distrust for the history of what's gone on, but even just recently, our commissioner falsified the December meeting minutes, which you helped with, Jennifer, and has been slandering, intentionally, maliciously slandering citizens who get up to ask questions. This is something that's been going on. There's ample evidence of it if you'd like to see it. And we actually really care a lot, and we don't want the negativity either. So I just wanted to speak to that, to say it's not distrusting you all, but there's a real reason, because we really, really love this place enough to keep coming to these meetings, which is not fun at all. I'd much rather be doing something else.
So to speak to that, and then I think to go ahead and call the vote, you know, the reason we placed the items on the agenda this evening is to make sure everybody here understood that we have done our due diligence and we are taking it seriously, and we've discussed these items, and we did want input from those attending tonight. Now, that aside, we do have a vote about whether we need to continue to keep the Union County Government Finance Corporation active. What that means is that it would be here if ever, there is no plan, but if ever the county needed to obtain better financing, it would be here and ready for the board to discuss better financing options. Not to decide whether there's more purchases of property, just to help with financing if it's required.
I'll ask one question before you go and vote. If you didn't need it for 11 years and you set this up right away, why don't you do that when you're getting ready to purchase a property?
So-
If in a recession, you would even think of doing that.
So it was never needed, and it's probably not gonna, it was not
wasn't
needed.
Right.
But it's probably not gonna be needed for a while, but it's still wise to have an EpiPen laying around if you're allergic to bees.
No, I don't wanna hear that. I wanna hear if there was no use for it.
Because it costs a lot of money to recreate. If the county ever needed it again, it would cost the taxpayer a lot of money to recreate, whereas it costs $50 to $100 a year to maintain. So,
One more question. Can you guarantee us right now that you're not gonna go out and purchase that 500?
we don't have an ability to
I know, but,
purchase.
you know, by keeping this.
We don't have any ability to purchase
what?
property.
What is
Yeah.
it you're concerned?
We're all concerned about that hospital property that's up for sale.
We don't have the ability to
But
affect
that's
the
what we're
transaction.
saying,
So you,
We're
your,
worried
your
about that-
concern is that Union County is going to purchase the property
Any
that the hospital
Yeah.
authority now owns?
Can property we don't know about.
yeah,
Yeah, but especially that 500 something acres.
yeah, that's what we're worried about. So that's why we're wondering if that's why you're gonna keep this open or any reason.
We're keeping it open because, well, we're voting to keep it open because it would cost a lot of money to create it in the future if the county needed better. Huh?
The reason that she said that is because in the local paper dated July 29th, 2020, Mr. Paris said he would like to have the county purchase the 580 acres from the hospital if it was sold. From the hospital if it was sold, and it would require about $6 million, and it would be a significant investment via development for the county. So that's why we're asking that. Is
I
this
know.
board gonna stay open because there's anticipation that the county wants to buy the 580 acres that the hospital is selling? That's what
With
we
all
want.
due respect, I understand that you guys are concerned about that, but we've said it once, and I'm gonna say it again.
Well,
We've
that's
not been
consistent.
approached, and we've not been asked,
It's not been a discussion.
and we don't have the ability to affect that.
Well, he stated it.
I don't have any
But-
control
but
over
the
that.
thing, if
There's a
That's why you
reason
guys
they
are
appointed
staying.
you.
if the county were going to purchase that, if they made the decision to purchase any property, our purpose would be to make sure that if we had the opportunity to finance it or to find financing that were more aggressive, a better way, any way to save the county money, that's what this purpose is. That's the only purpose of the corporation. That's what it is. We don't have any authority to make a decision on whether or not it's purchased. We don't have any authority we don't even wait on the decision of whether or not it gets bought. It's just for aggressive and competitive financing.
As a group, do you work with the developmental authority group that is also set up that looks for developmental things? Since you're the finance people, do you work with that? There's a 5-person group.
Don't,
Okay, so you don't work for them?
Let me go back and just answer something that you said. The reason we were appointed is there was a piece of property that had remained in the name of this group. And in order to vote, to do what we needed to do, in order to get the property transferred, the board had to be established in order to do that. That was the reason it was done. And initially,
Why did you say that?
well, that was what the last meeting was about, and I'm sorry you weren't here, and I understand that when you asked that question, I understood that you were struggling with it. That was the reason we were created. The question then becomes, we're here.
Let's close it down.
Let's close it down.
Why? I mean, I guess that was my initial thought, and initially I thought, well, that's what we'll do, we'll go in, we'll have a meeting. But then when you look at it, what's the purpose of closing it down? I mean, to me, that's like, well, you know, my health is good, I'm not gonna pay for my insurance next month because I don't, you know? And to me, this is an insurance policy.
All right, then why didn't he use that, why didn't he use this corporation to buy that, the community center when he went, instead of using the splosh money, and he set up that corporate, you know, that cost us $1,400,000 in interest,
There are many
plus all
times.
the things, so why didn't he use
But
it?
there are many times when financing it through a SPLOST or through a bond is cheaper for the
No.
taxpayer.
No, but the thing of it is, he said it was gonna be paid for with the splosh, and he didn't. He, after the splosh passed, he
Well, I
went
can't-
ahead and got
I
out.
can't speak to
Well,
that.
that's what I'm saying, is he got another corporation, you know, to buy that for, you know, and the interest was over $1 million, and it was $1,400,000. But what I'm saying, why didn't he use that corporation at this if it was so much cheaper to do it?
That doesn't necessarily mean it was or could have been.
But then why keep it on?
Let
me say something right quick. You know, we can fight these battles, you know, for 20 years back, and it doesn't have anything to do with today. And what we need to do, this group of people are here because they are concerned.
Gentlemen, I can't hear both people at the same time.
He's talking here.
So let me propose this. Mr. Hopgood,
I'll-
if you could go, Mr. Sims, then you could go afterwards. If there's any more questions or statements that anyone wants to say, because we have been doing this for over an hour. Has everybody been able, after these two, has everybody been able to be heard? Or do you have any more questions? If so, I want to make sure everybody gets to be heard and gets to ask a question. Anybody else that wants to go after Mr. Sims?
I want to thank the board for serving, being available.
Well, we're gonna let Mr. Hopgood go, then we're gonna let Mr. Sims go, and then we're gonna move on to item number 3. Unless somebody tells me now they have a statement or a question. No? Okay, Mr. Hopgood, the floor is yours.
The only thing that I'm saying is we can fight these battles from 10, 15 years back. It doesn't have anything to do with today. We can't change them. They are as they are. We are here because we care about our county. We have a voice, and the only way that we can change things from the past is to be here and demonstrate our voice and our opinions. I hush.
Mr. Sims, you have the floor, sir.
Yes, you made a true statement earlier that the county can buy and sell land, whatever they want to do. But only if they got the money to do it with. If they go in debt, long term, they have to have a referendum, that's the law. Okay? And so as far as was mentioned, I think the lady back here mentioned about the acreage that the hospital's got up for sale. Lamar Parrish bought that 3 acres with that big house on it out of the budget. That's his choice, he can do that. That's what we elect him to do, to make those kind of choices. But we also elect him that if there's a long-term finances involved, that a referendum needs to be held. And of course, you're not in litigation about this, but still, you're partly correct, but you're also partly wrong.
Well, thank you for coming and having your voice heard, Mr. Sims. All right, if we could move on to discussion, item number 3.
Well, so we're here for a vote.
Yes.
Well, I guess we vote, you need to make a motion, or do you want to vote yea or nay?
I think you have to make a motion.
Yeah, we're gonna make a
Yeah,
motion.
you have
All
to
right.
make a motion.
All right, is there a motion that we, Union County Government Finance Corporation remain active at this time moving forward?
Based on the information that I have looked at, discussions we have had, and by we, I mean you, what you've heard from us, I believe it is in the county's best interest for this board to remain open, and I make a motion that we leave it open. I second.
All right. Motion passes. All in favor? Aye. All right. One other order of business that I do want to talk about is our next meeting. I'd like to go ahead and set that meeting today if we can, tentatively. In my.
We didn't get the vote.
Yeah, we needed to vote.
We appreciate your input.
Do you want to do every 6 months? Which one? Or do you want to plan?
Already
you want to
That's
plan
the
later?
requirements is 1 meeting a year.
Yeah. Meeting a year.
1 meeting a year, and then you'll meet in January, so that's,
Why don't we just do January?
I'm like, that's
The
entirely.
annual meeting in January, unless something comes up, you have to do a special call meeting.
All right.
Okay. No other business, so I have a motion to adjourn.
I motion to adjourn.
Second. We're adjourned.
Actually, I want this